Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today. Trump says Iran and Israel agreed to a ceasefire. So Monday has been a very confusing day. My head has basically been on a swivel. We had the Iranian counterattack against a U.S. base in Qatar, and we will get into that in the next story. And then about 6 p.m., President Trump announced on Truth Social, claimed on Truth Social that Israel and Iran agreed to a ceasefire, ending what he called the 12-day war. And the thing is, though, is that he made this announcement during heavy Israeli attacks on Iran. And then I think it was a couple hours later, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said in a post on X that there was no agreement on a ceasefire, but he said that Iran would cease counterattacks on Israel if Israel stopped its strikes on Iran, which has essentially been Iran's position throughout this war. They've said, if Israel stops, we'll stop. So I'll read what Araghchi wrote on X. He said, quote, "As Iran has repeatedly made clear, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. As of now, there is no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations. However, provided that the Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. The final decision on the cessation of our military operations will be made later," end quote. In a follow-up post, Araghchi appeared to suggest that Iran was now implementing a ceasefire, but then a little while after that, the Israeli military claimed that it detected a missile launch from Iran. And right now, I'm recording, it's 10:30 p.m. here in the U.S., here in Virginia, early in the morning over in Iran and Israel. And right now, there's reports, again, of Iranian missile fire at Israel. We'll check the live updates before the end of the show to see what the latest is. But as of right now, it's not completely confirmed that Iran's firing missiles. There's also the chance that it could be a missile from Yemen. I know during this war, I saw reports of, Iran fired one single missile at Israel, and then it turns out it was fired by the Houthis in Yemen. But for now, this is, again, it's all very confusing. And I'll read some of Trump's post. And, I'm skeptical of things like this coming from Trump at this point because he has engaged in this deception campaign, lying, saying that he's committed to a diplomatic solution hours before Israel launched its war, and then claiming that he was going to make his decision to bomb Iran within 2 weeks, and then just a few days later he bombed Iran, and it's basically been confirmed that that was a lie to keep Iran on its toes. But I'll read some of what Trump said on Truth Social. He said, quote, "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful," end quote. So based on what Trump said, he's saying that Iran would implement the ceasefire immediately, followed by Israel 12 hours later, which just does not seem like a deal that Iran would agree with. And again, when he made this announcement, Israel was launching very heavy airstrikes in Tehran. Also, as of this recording, Israel has not confirmed that it's agreed to a ceasefire. So again, we just don't really know what's going on here. But kind of, a strange announcement from Trump. This is what he concluded the post with, quote, "On the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will, I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage, and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel. God bless Iran. God bless the Middle East. God bless the United States of America. And God bless the world, end quote. And again, after the announcement, explosions were reported in Tehran, and Israel ordered another evacuation for a district in Tehran. So let me just check while we're on this topic. I'm going to check the latest live updates from the Times of Israel. No immediate reports of impacts or injuries in Iranian missile salvo, so they are reporting that Iran fired missiles. Trump had another post where he hailed love, peace, and prosperity as Iranian missiles send Israelis to shelters. So we'll see. Again, still no official announcement from Israel. And if history is any guide over the past year and a half, they have not, I mean, obviously it goes back longer than a year and a half, but Israel has not been known to keep its word when it comes to ceasefires. All right, so the next one here, Trump thanks Iran for early notice on Qatar attack. So President Trump on Monday thanked Iran for giving the U.S. notice of its plans to launch a retaliatory attack on the U.S.'s Al Udeid base in Qatar, saying that it prevented casualties. So Iran's military launched this attack on the U.S. base in Qatar in response to the U.S. bombing of its 3 nuclear facilities. Trump called the Iranian retaliation weak, suggesting that he's not planning to respond. So again, another post here from Trump. He said, quote, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired, 13 were knocked down, and 1 was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system, and there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured, end quote. He also said that there was no Americans, no Qataris were hurt or killed. So again, this came out, this was like middle of the day, Monday. Here, it was Monday night over in Qatar. And the initial reports, there was indications that there could be an attack on U.S. bases in Iraq, but that turned out not to be true. The U.S. just activated its air defenses, although there's been some other little drone attacks happening in Iraq, and it's not exactly clear what's going on with that at this time. But Iran announced that they only targeted the base in Qatar, and they notified the U.S. beforehand. And I was, not expecting them to go with the limited attack like they did after Trump killed Soleimani in 2020. But they choreographed it, and no harm. And again, Trump is signaling that he won't respond. But again, it is very hard to trust anything he says about this stuff at this point. But Iran's clearly showing that it wants de-escalation with the U.S. And this just goes against the whole narrative that, the narrative is that if this country gets a nuclear weapon, they would immediately use it and destroy everybody they can. But obviously, you see when it comes down to it, they're very pragmatic when it comes to military action. And of course, the whole narrative that they were trying to build a nuclear weapon isn't true. But still, it goes against the whole entire narrative of this whole justification for this war. So the next one here, Trump's 2-week timeline on Iran was another head fake. So this article is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, but more confirmation. There was a report from Axios that quoted an advisor to President Trump who said that his statements in the lead up to the attack on Iran's nuclear facilities were a head fake meant to deceive Tehran. Washington and Tel Aviv deployed a similar strategy in the run-up to Israel's own surprise attack on Iran. So essentially just confirming again that this was a false timeline and that he already decided that he was going to attack Iran. And also, this wasn't just a deception aimed at Iran. It was also a deception at people in Trump's circle who were urging de-escalation. So this is a source speaking to Axios who said, quote, the president wanted to buy time. He knew what he wanted to do, and he knows he can't look eager for war. So all the folks in MAGA urging restraint gave him some space, end quote. And I saw people, Trump supporters who were against the idea of bombing Iran, when he announced that he would make a decision in 2 weeks, they said, phew, this is good. At least he's not bombing them right away. This is a sign that he might not do it. So again, he wasn't just lying to Iran. He was lying to his people, to Americans, to the whole world. All right, so the next one here, Rubio says it's irrelevant whether Iran wanted a nuclear weapon. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Sunday that whether Iran has decided to build a nuclear weapon is irrelevant, as he was pressed on the lack of evidence that Tehran has taken steps to weaponize its nuclear program. And he made these comments in an interview with CBS News when asked about the fact that U.S. intelligence has no evidence that Tehran was seeking a bomb before Israel launched its war on the country. Rubio said, quote, "That's irrelevant. I think that question being asked in the media, that's an irrelevant question. They have everything they need to build a nuclear weapon," end quote. And of course, as we've gone over quite a bit, Tulsi Gabbard said in March that there was no evidence Iran was building a nuclear weapon. And then there was multiple reports throughout the media and from sources, independent sources that I trust, who said that the U.S. intelligence had no additional evidence. Before Israel launched its attack, it had no indication. The intelligence didn't change. No evidence that Iran was trying to build a nuclear weapon. And now Rubio says, "Oh, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter." And he says, "Why would they be enriching uranium at the 60% level?" Which it's very clear that the 60% uranium enrichment was, leverage, making consequences for U.S. and Israeli aggression against Iran. They took the step to increase uranium enrichment to 60% in 2021 after Israel set off a bomb in its Natanz nuclear facility. Now we can question if that strategy was the right strategy in the wake of this war that's been launched against Iran, but it is very clear that that's the purpose of this 60% enriched uranium. And Iran also made it clear that in a deal with the U.S., it was willing to bring that level down to 3.67%. But Trump demanded the zero enrichment, which was essentially a poison pill to sabotage negotiations. All right, so the next one here, Israel says that it fired 200 munitions at Iran in strikes on Monday. So the Israeli military said on Monday that its Air Force fired 200 munitions into Iran after a day of heavy attacks across the country, as the death toll in the Israeli bombing campaign is nearing 1,000, according to numbers from a U.S.-based rights group. So this is the human rights activists in Tehran. They are very critical of Iran's government, but they said so this is a non-government sources is essentially the point I'm making there. But they said as of Sunday night, Israeli strikes on Iran since June 13th have killed at least 950 people, including 380 civilians, 253 military personnel, and 317 people who have yet to be classified as either civilian or military. So another 3,450 people have been injured, including 1,564 civilians, 248 military personnel, and 1,638 people who have not been classified. The group said that in Iran, Israel has targeted infrastructure, military and civilian facilities, residential and industrial areas in 25 provinces. And Israeli strikes on Monday included the bombing of the Evin prison in Tehran, which is known to hold political prisoners and dissidents. And according to the Times of Israel, the strike was apparently intended to allow the detainees to escape the facility. So that sounds like something you would do if you want regime change in the country, is bomb a prison to release inmates who are political prisoners. And there were reports that the strike hit the entrance gate and a judiciary building located within the compound, and several Iranian soldiers were reported killed in the strikes, and several prison staff and inmates were also wounded in the attack. This 200 munitions, this doesn't count the attacks that Israel was launching around the time Trump announced the ceasefire and following, because that started Tuesday morning in Iran. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. evacuates embassy in Lebanon as Israel steps up strikes. So this one is from Jason Ditt. So the U.S. has ordered all non-essential personnel and families to leave Lebanon, with the State Department saying the decision was based on the increasingly uncertain stability in the region. The concern with Lebanon is the risk of it getting dragged into the ongoing Israeli and U.S. war against Iran. And given the ever-growing number of Israeli strikes inside Lebanon, it seems increasingly unlikely that Hezbollah will continue to sit on the sidelines, but for now, Hezbollah has not gotten involved in the war. And again, Israel continued to carry out strikes overnight in Lebanon, and this goes very underreported with everything else that's happening. All right, so the next one here, Israeli military kills 43 Palestinians in Gaza. Medical sources have told Al Jazeera that Israeli forces have killed at least 43 more Palestinians in Gaza on Monday as the daily massacres continue, while much of the world's attention is on the Israeli-U.S. war against Iran. Among those killed on Monday were at least 20 Palestinians who were seeking aid since the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began operating in Gaza at the end of May. More than 400 people have been killed by the IDF while attempting to get food for their starving families. These massacres continue to happen every day. The picture here is of a boy, of a child, who was killed, according to Reuters, while seeking aid in northern Gaza. So absolutely horrific. And there was also heavy airstrikes and shelling. According to Wafa, the Palestinian news agency, at least 4 people were killed and others were wounded when Israeli warplanes targeted tents sheltering displaced Palestinians near the southern city of Khan Yunis. 3 brothers were killed in Beit Lahia, northern Gaza, while inspecting their damaged home. There was also strikes in Jabalia that killed at least 4. So again, just continue the massacres, the genocide continues every single day. All right, so the next one here, key Netanyahu ally says October 7th attack saved the people of Israel. So Ari Deri, the chair of Israel's ultra-Orthodox Shas party and a key ally of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said on Monday that the October 7th Hamas attack on southern Israel saved the people of Israel. He said, quote, "We were struck with a terrible blow, one we still haven't recovered from. We lost so many lives and we still have hostages. But it saved Israel because Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, that wicked villain, decided to be the first to strike rather than wait for a broader front to form." End quote. He said that October 7th set off a chain of miracles that weakened Iran and its allies in the region. Another great miracle that happened, according to Deri, was the election of Donald Trump as the president of the United States. He said, quote, "Without October 7th, without Trump, and without Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we couldn't have done it," end quote. Netanyahu has used the October 7th attack, of course, to justify the genocidal onslaught in Gaza. And he's made clear that the ultimate goal is ethnic cleansing. He said that that's actually a condition to end the war now. And he calls it Trump's plan, referring to Trump's calls for the U.S. to take over Gaza, which involves expelling the Palestinian population. And then, of course, the Israeli government has also been engaged in wars in Lebanon, Syria, Iran, of course, now, and significantly stepped up its military operations and theft of Palestinian land in the West Bank. Very little attention is on what's happening in the West Bank, and they've just been on this tear in the region. And this Israeli politician is saying, thank God for October 7th is essentially what he's saying here. So we were able to justify all these actions, all this expansion, all this destruction and death. And he also praised Netanyahu for keeping his plans to attack Iran secret. I mean, it was no secret that Netanyahu wanted to attack Iran, but it wasn't clear exactly how it would go down. All right, so the next one here, Trump attacks Russia's Medvedev over the N-word. So you heard that right. This article is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So President Donald Trump took aim at former Russian President and Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev over his warning that a country could provide a nuclear weapon to Iran in response to the American and Israeli bombing of the Islamic Republic. In a thread on X, Medvedev listed what he believed would be 10 consequences of the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. He said critical infrastructure of the nuclear cycle appears to have been unaffected or sustained only minor damage. The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. This is his list here. Number 3, a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. So Trump responded to Medvedev, who Medvedev is currently the chair of the Russian Security Council. And Trump said, quote, "Did I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the N-word? and in parentheses, nuclear. So nuclear is the N-word. He goes on, and saying that he and other countries would supply nuclear warheads to Iran. Did he really say that, or is it just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. The N-word should not be treated so casually, end quote. This comes from the guy bombing a bunch of nuclear facilities. So Medvedev replied to Trump in a written statement saying that Moscow was not considering sending a nuclear weapon to Tehran, but says that other countries might. He said, quote, Russia has no intention of supplying nuclear weapons to Iran because, unlike Israel, we are parties to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, end quote. And of course, that's the thing that rarely gets discussed, is the fact that Israel has a secret nuclear weapons program and is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and its program is subject to zero oversight. But he's saying other countries might supply Iran with nuclear weapons. So that's what he's saying. He said it. I'm not saying Russia will, but it was kind of a funny exchange between Medvedev and Trump. All right, so the next one here, NSC advisors urged ISIS-style drone attacks on Russian rail. This article is from Kit Klarenberg at the Gray Zone. So leaked war plans sent to the U.S. National Security Council instructed Kiev to carry out ISIS-style drone attacks on Russian trains and rail bridges, foreshadowing a series of deadly Ukrainian attacks this May and June. So a group of British and American academics advising the U.S. National Security Council explicitly urged Ukraine to adopt the tactics of ISIS in a detailed proposal for anti-rail drone operations, according to leaked documents reviewed by the Gray Zone. And these were documents from... this is advice that was given to the Biden National Security Council. And again, the leaked plans explore the use of inexpensive drones as a low-cost means for disrupting Russian logistics. But it also includes blueprints for terror attacks composed by 3 drone experts before being passed to the Biden administration's then director for Russia at the National Security Council, Colonel Tim Wright. Those experts belong to a secret academic intelligence cell called Project Alchemy, whose existence was first exposed by the Gray Zone and which was founded with a mission to keep Ukraine fighting by imposing strategic dilemmas, costs, and friction upon Russia. And Project Alchemy, this is something connected to British intelligence, and apparently here they're also advising the U.S. National Security Council. I mean, the fact that they're actually saying ISIS-style attacks is just really insane. But go check out the full report from Kit here. He's got the documents and everything. It's craziness. I really haven't been focusing enough on the war in Ukraine, the proxy war in Ukraine, which continues, unfortunately. So the next one here, I left up the one yesterday about the U.S. airstrikes in Somalia. Let's check out the live updates, see what the latest is. It is now 10:52 p.m. in Virginia, and 4 minutes ago, the Times of Israel reported that medics are responding to reported missile impact in Beersheba, which is southern Israel. So it sounds like there's been missile impact, and missile sirens sound across central and southern Israel. So it does seem like it is a missile barrage that's being fired at Israel. Al Jazeera also reporting explosions in Tel Aviv as sirens continue to blare. First Iranian missile fired toward Israel since Trump's ceasefire announcement. Another thing, I think I mentioned this, but Israel still has not made any sort of statement that it was implementing a ceasefire with Iran or anything. All right, so the Viewpoints, go check them out. One from Ted Snyder, The Dangerous Consequences of the U.S. Attack on Iran. One from Ron Paul, President Trump End the War Now. One from Medea Benjamin and Nicholas J.S. Davies, How the U.S. and Israel Hijacked the IAEA to Start a War on Iran. One from Branko March-Teach, Trump's Iran War is a Betrayal We All Saw Coming. And a spotlight from Daniel Larison, The Mad King's War. So please go check all that out. I was interviewed by Matt Gaetz, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, for his show, The Matt Gaetz Show. It's just a short little segment, like 3 or 4 minutes. I posted the clip on Twitter. I could put it in the description if I remember. But it was actually during that interview where I learned of this ceasefire that was announced by Trump. So I was a little caught off guard. But essentially my message was, the wars, the U.S. is going to be continue to be involved in conflicts and wars in the Middle East unless Trump is willing to cut military aid to Israel. That's the only way to make peace. That was my message that I delivered to the OAN audience. So I'll try to remember to put the link to that in the description. You could always support the show by liking, subscribing, commenting, all that stuff. I will be back tomorrow. Hopefully things are clear when it comes to the situation in Israel and Iran. For now, it seems like the war is still on, but there might be some kind of ceasefire. I don't know. I don't have much confidence. But anyway, I will be back tomorrow with some more news. Thanks for listening.